We see the Hollywood version, blonde captives dragged to altars, dramatic sacrifices under torchlight. But the real Viking victory rites tell a different story, one buried in mass graves, slave market records, and temple foundations across Scandinavia. From Dublin's auction blocks to Uppsala's ritual grounds, captive women faced fates far more complex than cinema suggests. What actually happened when Viking armies claimed victory? What do the bones and Byzantine accounts reveal about these ceremonies? The answer lies in 3 documented practices that shaped how conquest captives were processed. Not random violence, but systematic ritual integration that served political, economic, and religious functions across the Norse world. If you value documented Viking and Norse-era history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from archaeological reports and medieval chronicles, including the Russian primary chronicle. Now, back to the story. Most captive women never saw the altar. They saw the auction block. Dublin's slave market processed an estimated 10,000 captives yearly between 841 and 902. The Annals of Ulster record systematic sorting after each major raid. Young women, particularly those with craft skills, commanded premium prices. A skilled weaver brought 12 silver marks in 886. A noblewoman's daughter captured at Armagh fetched 24 marks, enough to buy 3 warships. The process was methodical. Ships returned to Dublin Bay. Captives were quartered in wooden pens near the Liffey. Traders from Hedeby, Burka, and Staraya Ladoga examined their purchases. Bills of sale survive on birch bark from Novgorod. One 934 transaction lists Mayor of Cork, 16 winters weaver, no children, good teeth for 8 silver marks. Another, Brigid, noble blood, literate in Latin, 14 marks. Dublin's market operated on industrial scale. The 2003 excavations at Wood Quay revealed the infrastructure. Stone foundations for 17 auction platforms, iron rings embedded in oak posts, shackle points, drainage channels cut into bedrock to handle waste from packed holding areas. The archaeological team found over 3,000 foreign coins in the market layer, Byzantine gold numismata, Islamic dirhams from Samarkand, Frankish deniers from Tours. Each coin tells a transaction story. A 941 dirham from the Volga Bulgars found with burnt organic matter, probably from a bill of sale. A 953 Byzantine solidus, discovered near the platform foundations with scratch marks showing its weight verification. The traders knew their business. They tested silver purity with touchstones, weighed gold against standardized weights, calculated exchange rates across 3 continents. York operated similarly. Between 866 and 954, English chronicles document systematic captive processing. The market sat where Coppergate meets the Ouse. Archaeological layers show wooden platforms, iron shackles, and thousands of foreign coins. Byzantine gold, Islamic silver, Frankish deniers. The slave trade powered Viking expansion more than any raid. The Coppergate excavations revealed the sorting system. Separate holding areas for different captive categories. Children under 12 in smaller compounds with higher walls. Women aged 15 to 30 in medium enclosures near the river. Elderly captives and injured men in temporary shelters. These were processed quickly for local labor or disposal. Physical evidence shows the brutal efficiency. 17 skeletons from the market period show healed fractures consistent with restraint injuries. Wrist bones display groove marks from constant shackling. Dental wear indicates coarse food, probably ship's hardtack and gruel. Malnutrition. Markers appear in 80% of the female remains. But high-value captives faced different fates. Religious sites demanded specific offerings. Uppsala's temple complex, active from 550 to 1090, processed captive women through elaborate 9-day rites. Adam of Bremen's 1075 account describes the festival. Every 9 years, all provinces send representatives. No one is exempt from this observance. The temple's foundation excavations reveal the system. 3 sacrificial wells, each 17 feet deep. Human remains from multiple periods, predominantly female, aged 15 to 25. Bone analysis shows these weren't random killings. Carbon dating places most deaths during harvest season, September through October, systematic timing that matched agricultural and military cycles. The Uppsala wells contained more than bones. The 1926 archaeological team found textile fragments, jewelry pieces, and weapon fragments alongside human remains. One well yielded a complete amber necklace, 43 beads from Baltic deposits. Another contained silver arm rings consistent with Irish metalwork. The third held fragments of silk fabric, probably Byzantine origin. Each artifact suggests captive origin. The amber necklace matches styles from captured Prussian settlements along the Vistula. The Irish silver appeared after documented raids on Clonmacnoise in 988. The silk fragments date to 1034. The same year, Harold Hardrada returned from Constantinople with captured Byzantine nobles. Temple records survive in runic inscriptions on foundation stones. One stone, discovered in 1907, lists 9 names in Old Norse: Astrid Irishwoman, Valdiswen girl, Ragnhild Kivborn. Another records the ritual calendar: 9th winter after king's crowning, harvest moon, 9 days, 9 nights. The Rus operated similarly along the Volga trade route. Ibn Fadlan's 922 account documents a ship chieftain's funeral on the Volga. The ritual required a volunteer from among the captive women. Which of you will die with him? The woman who volunteered received special treatment: fine clothes, constant supervision, ritual drinks. The ceremony climaxed with her death and cremation alongside her master. But Fadlan's account reveals the selection process. Not random sacrifice, but careful choice. The volunteer became a conduit between the living and dead, ensuring the chieftain's successful passage to Valhalla. Her death secured divine favor for the entire crew's future ventures. The Volga burial. Sites confirm Fadlan's details. The Gnezdovo complex contains over 4,000 burial mounds from 900 to 1050. 47 mounds show evidence of multiple burials with ship remains. Female skeletons appear in 31 of these ship burials. Age analysis shows clustering between 16 and 24 years. Isotope analysis indicates foreign birth in 75% of cases. One burial, excavated in 1993, preserved the complete ritual sequence. A 30-foot ship burial contained a male skeleton in full battle gear surrounded by weapons, silver, and trade goods. At the ship's stern lay a female skeleton wearing silk robes with gold thread embroidery. Her skull showed evidence of blunt, force trauma, consistent with Fadlan's description of ritual killing. But the burial also held surprises. The woman's skeleton showed no signs of malnutrition or restraint injuries. Her teeth indicated a high-protein diet with honey consumption. Bone chemistry suggested she lived well for months before death. This wasn't last-minute sacrifice. She was prepared specifically for this role. The third practice combined both functions, ritual and economic: marriage integration that transformed captives into kinship assets. The Icelandic sagas document hundreds of cases where captured noblewomen became wives, not slaves. Strategic alliances sealed through forced marriage that legitimized conquest and created political bonds. Egil's saga records Thorolf's marriage to Sigrid, daughter of a defeated Danish jarl. The wedding feast lasted 9 days. Sigrid brought her father's silver hoard as dowry, 40 marks. Her children inherited claims to Danish territory. One marriage created 3 generations of territorial rights. The system worked both ways. Norse women captured in Celtic raids became high-status wives in Irish kingdoms. The annals of the Four Masters record multiple cases. Gormlith, captured at Dublin in 919, married the King of Leinster within 2 years. Her son claimed the High, kingship in 956. Marriage integration followed documented patterns. The captured noblewoman retained her birth name, but added a Norse patronymic. She wore traditional dress from her homeland during the wedding ceremony, then switched to Norse fashion afterward. Her children received names that honored both cultures. The legal documents from Iceland's parliament, the Althing, record dozens of inheritance disputes involving mixed bloodlines. These marriages created diplomatic networks spanning Europe. Thorstein, the Red's daughter, Groa, captured in Scotland. Around 872, married into the Orkney Jarls. Her grandchildren held land in the Hebrides, Orkney and Iceland simultaneously. When conflicts arose between these territories, her descendants served as negotiators. If you value documented Viking and Norse-era history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing. This from Doug. Archaeological evidence confirms the complexity. Birka's graves show integrated families with mixed cultural artifacts. Grave 854 contains a woman buried with Slavic jewelry, Frankish coins, and Norse weapons. DNA analysis reveals Eastern European ancestry. Her children's graves show full Norse cultural integration within 1 generation. The Birka woman's grave tells a complete story. She was buried around 9 to 25, wearing a silver Thor's hammer pendant alongside Orthodox Christian cross earrings. Her grave goods included Byzantine silk, Arabic coins, and a knife made from Frankish steel. The combination suggests someone who moved between multiple cultural worlds. Analysis of her children's graves reveals the integration process. Her eldest daughter, buried in 945, wore purely Norse jewelry and was interred with typical Scandinavian grave goods. Her son's grave contained only Norse weapons and coins. Within 20 years, the foreign elements had disappeared completely from the family's material culture. But integration wasn't always successful. Some graves show signs of cultural resistance. A burial from Hedeby, dated to 934, contains a woman buried with deliberately broken Norse artifacts, alongside intact Slavic jewelry. The broken Thor's hammer and damaged Norse coins suggest rejection of imposed cultural symbols. The numbers tell the real story. Of roughly 200,000 captives taken during the Viking Age's peak centuries, perhaps 5% died in religious ceremonies. 20% entered marriage integration. The remaining 75% fueled the international slave trade that connected Greenland to Constantinople. These statistics emerge from multiple sources. The slave market records from Dublin, York, and Hedeby provide transaction data. Temple excavations offer sacrifice counts. Marriage records from Icelandic and Norwegian legal documents track integration numbers. Together, they paint a clear picture of systematic processing. The 75,000 captives sold into long-distance trade moved along established routes. The eastern path ran from Novgorod down the Dnieper to Constantinople. The western route connected Dublin to Rouen, then overland to Mediterranean ports. A northern circuit linked Hedeby to Burka, then across the Baltic to Staraya Ladoga. Each route had specialized markets. Constantinople preferred skilled craftsmen and educated women who could serve as tutors. The Islamic world demanded young warriors and household servants. Western European buyers sought agricultural workers and domestic help. The Norse traders adapted their selection methods to match demand. Temple sacrifice required specific conditions, major victories, seasonal festivals, political legitimation. Most raids didn't meet these thresholds. Regular warfare produced captives destined for markets, not altars. The distinction mattered. Religious killing served the gods, commercial selling served expansion. The religious calendar determined sacrifice timing. Uppsala's major festivals occurred every 9 years, timed to coincide with the Thing assemblies where political decisions were made. Smaller temples held seasonal rites during the equinoxes and solstices. The calendar meant that most captives, taken outside these windows, automatically entered commercial processing. Archaeological evidence shows the difference. Religious burial sites contain high-status grave goods, silk, silver, amber, precious metals. Commercial processing sites yield mainly iron shackles, simple pottery, and organic waste. The gods received luxury. The markets processed bulk commodity. The Stamford Bridge excavations reveal how the system evolved. The 1066 battle site contains mass graves with mixed Norse and Anglo-Saxon remains. Female skeletons show evidence of captivity. Healed wrist fractures from shackles, malnutrition markers, dental wear from rough food, but also integration signs, Norse-style dress pins, Christian burial orientation, jewelry that suggests elevated status. The battle marked a turning point. Harold Hardrada's army included over 3,000 warriors, many with captive women following the host. When the army was destroyed, these women faced uncertain fates. The mass graves show both executions and adoptions. Some skeletons display weapon wounds. Others show signs of continued life and eventual integration into Anglo-Saxon society. The final phase shifted toward full integration. As Viking territories stabilized into kingdoms, captive processing became administrative rather than ritual. Denmark's 1085 census records show thousands of foreign-born women as legal wives, not slaves. Their children held inheritance rights. The system had evolved from exploitation to absorption. King Canute's legal codes from 1018 codified the change. Captive women who bore children to Danish men automatically received free status. Their children could inherit property and hold it, official positions. The law transformed military acquisition into demographic expansion. But the religious dimension never fully disappeared. The 1090 Uppsala excavation revealed the final sacrificial layer, 3 women's skeletons arranged around a ship burial. Carbon dating places their deaths within months of the temple's Christian conversion. The last victory rite performed as the old gods died. These final sacrifices show desperation. The women were killed hastily without the elaborate preparation of earlier rituals. Their grave goods were meager, simple iron rings, basic pottery, no precious metals. The old system was collapsing, but die-hard practitioners made one last offering to gods who no longer answered. The conversion to Christianity changed everything. Churches condemned the slave trade. Bishops demanded the release of captives. Monasteries offered sanctuary to escaped slaves. The new religion provided moral framework that challenged the entire captive processing system. But economic incentives proved stronger than religious prohibition. The slave trade continued under Christian rulers, just with different justification. Captive pagans could be enslaved to facilitate their conversion. War criminals deserved bondage as punishment. Debt slaves worked off legitimate obligations. The system adapted rather than disappearing. A 1993 construction project in Dublin uncovered the slave market's final secret. Beneath the medieval street level, workers found a stone chamber containing 127 skeletons, all female, ages 15 to 30. Bone chemistry reveals diverse origins, Celtic, Germanic, Slavic, but similar death dates around 1170, exactly when Anglo-Norman conquest ended Dublin's slave trade. The chamber told a grim story. These were the unsold inventory when the market collapsed. Women too old, too sick, or too expensive to move quickly. Rather than release them, the traders killed them and sealed the chamber. The business model had failed, but the practitioners showed no mercy to their remaining assets. The skeletons show signs of prolonged captivity. All had healed fractures. From shackles, malnutrition markers appear in every skeleton. Dental wear indicates years of rough food. These women had lived in bondage for extended periods before their final disposal. But one skeleton stood apart. A woman buried with gold arm rings and Byzantine silk fragments. Bone chemistry indicates Scandinavian origin. She was Norse, possibly a trader's wife or daughter who somehow ended up in the chamber. Even the slave merchants weren't safe from their own system's violence. The chamber told a grim story. These were the unsold inventory when the market collapsed. Women too old, too sick, or too expensive to move quickly. Rather than release them, the traders killed them and sealed the chamber. The business model had failed, but the practitioners showed no mercy to their remaining assets. The skeletons show signs of prolonged captivity. All had healed fractures from shackles. Malnutrition markers appear in every skeleton. Dental wear indicates years of rough food. These women had lived in bondage for extended periods before their final disposal. But one skeleton stood apart. A woman buried with gold arm rings and Byzantine silk fragments. Bone chemistry indicates Scandinavian origin. She was Norse, possibly a trader's wife or daughter who somehow ended up in the chamber. Even the slave merchants weren't safe from their own system's violence. The Dublin discovery wasn't unique. Similar chambers appeared across former Viking territories as the trade collapsed. Winchester's 1987 excavations found 93 female skeletons in a sealed stone room beneath the medieval market square. York's Coppergate dig revealed a mass burial of 87 women, all showing captivity markers. Chester, Lincoln, and Norwich yielded comparable finds. The pattern suggests coordinated disposal across England. When the Anglo-Norman conquest disrupted Viking trade networks in 1066 to 1170, slave merchants faced a logistical crisis. Thousands of captive women became liabilities rather than assets. The chambers represent a systematic liquidation of human inventory. But some women escaped before the final collapse. The Pipe Rolls, England's financial records, document payments for runaway Northman women throughout the 12th century. Bounties ranged from 2 to 8 silver marks per capture. The higher payments went to trackers who could identify former slaves by their distinctive scarification. Slave merchants used branding to mark ownership. Archaeological evidence from Dublin and York shows heated iron tools designed for human marking. The brands identified the merchant, the woman's origin, and her skill category. A circle meant household worker. A cross indicated craft skills. A ship symbol marked her for overseas sale. The scars helped authorities identify escapees decades later. Court records from Canterbury describe a woman named Astrid, captured in 1156, who still bore a Dublin merchant's brand 40 years after her escape. She had married an English farmer, raised 6 children, and owned substantial property. But the scar proved her slave origins when inheritance disputes arose. Similar stories emerge across Europe. The Domesday Book records hundreds of foreign-born women married to English landowners. Many entries note former thrall status or of Norse blood. These women had successfully integrated into post-conquest society, but their origins remained permanently documented. The integration process varied by region. In England, former slave women could gain legal status through marriage or religious conversion. Church records show hundreds of baptisms for women of the North during the 1070s, 1090s. The ceremony symbolically washed away slave status and granted Christian protection. French territories offered different paths. Normandy's legal codes allowed slave women to purchase freedom through craft work. The textile guilds of Rouen included former captives who had bought their liberty by weaving for cathedral construction. Their skill with complex patterns made them valuable beyond their slave status. The Flemish territories developed the most systematic integration. The wool trade required skilled female workers who understood different textile traditions, captured. Celtic, Germanic, and Slavic women brought knowledge of distinct weaving techniques. Flemish merchants offered graduated freedom, partial liberty after 5 years, full freedom after 10. But integration came with conditions. Former slaves couldn't testify against freeborn citizens. Their children faced legal restrictions until the 3rd generation. Marriage required approval from the local lord. Property ownership was limited. Freedom wasn't equality. The archaeological record shows these restrictions physically. Burials of former slave women contain fewer grave goods than freeborn contemporaries. Their jewelry is simpler, their textiles coarser. Even successful integration didn't erase the economic legacy of bondage. Some regions preserved the old customs longer than others. The Orkney Islands continued ritual sacrifice until 1135. The Hebrides maintained slave markets until 1156. Iceland's Althing didn't ban thrall ownership until 1117. Remote territories resisted change when central authority was weak. The final holdouts were the merchant republics. Novgorod's slave market operated until 1240. Gotland's traders processed captives until 1220. These cities depended entirely on long-distance commerce. When the slave trade ended, their economies collapsed within decades. The Mongol invasions of 1237-1240 finished what Christian conversion had started. The Golden Horde disrupted eastern trade routes that had connected Scandinavia to Constantinople. No more Byzantine silk, Islamic silver, or Asian spices. The economic foundation of the slave trade crumbled. Archaeological evidence marks the transition. Coin hoards buried after 1240 contain only local silver, not international currency. Silk fragments disappear from burial sites. Amber and furs replace precious metals in grave goods. The global economy that had sustained Viking expansion contracted to regional trade. But the human cost extended far beyond economics. Modern DNA analysis of medieval European populations reveals the demographic impact. Roughly 8% of medieval English bloodlines show Scandinavian ancestry introduced during the Viking period. Similar percentages appear in Irish, Scottish, and French populations. The genetic markers tell stories of integration and resistance. Some lineages show gradual mixing over generations, evidence of successful marriage integration. Others display sharp genetic boundaries that suggest isolated communities maintaining distinct identity. The captive women's descendants chose different strategies for cultural survival. Recent isotope analysis adds another layer. Teeth from medieval cemeteries reveal childhood locations based on mineral content. Many skeletons show dramatic shifts, childhood in one region, adulthood in another. These are the children of captive women, born in bondage but raised in foreign lands. The isotope evidence also reveals attempted escapes. Some skeletons show multiple location shifts during childhood and adolescence. These individuals moved repeatedly, suggesting parents who fled captivity multiple times before finding permanent sanctuary. The legal records preserve other escape stories. The laws of Edward the Confessor mention women who fled the northern ships as a distinct legal category. They could claim sanctuary in churches, but only if they converted to Christianity and renounced their pagan origins. Monastery records document the process. The Abbey of St. Albans received 47 northern women between 1050 and 1080. Each received a Christian name, basic literacy training, and placement as lay sisters. Their children were raised in the abbey schools and often became priests, or nuns themselves. The church's motivation wasn't purely charitable. Former slave women brought valuable knowledge. They understood multiple languages, knew foreign customs, and maintained connections across cultural boundaries. Monasteries used these women as translators, negotiators, and intelligence sources. But religious conversion couldn't erase trauma. Medical analysis of skeletal remains shows consistent patterns. Former slave women display higher rates of joint disease, dental problems, and stress fractures. Their bones preserve evidence of prolonged physical hardship that continued affecting them decades after gaining freedom. The children fared better physically, but faced different challenges. Legal documents describe inheritance disputes involving children of mixed blood. These individuals could claim property from both parents' lineages, but often faced challenges from relatives who questioned their legitimacy. Some found success despite these obstacles. The Chronicle of Matthew Paris describes Ingvar Thorson, son of a captured Irish woman and Norse trader. He became a wealthy merchant in London, owned 3 ships, and funded construction of St. Botolph's Church. His mother's captivity became the foundation for his family's prosperity. But success stories were rare. Most children of captive women remained in lower social classes. They worked as servants, craftsmen, or small farmers. Their foreign ancestry was visible in church records but rarely mentioned in official documents. They lived between worlds, never fully accepted in either. The women who never made it to auction, the inventory that couldn't be liquidated. Bodies disposed of when the archaeological market collapsed. Viking victory rites didn't end with Christianization. They ended when conquest itself became unprofitable.